Bitcoin and Ethereum blockchains are not the only blockchains in existence. In fact, there's a number of blockchains that are seeking to improve upon privacy, transaction speed, and features, among other things. Today, you're going to meet the CEO and chief architect of Dragonchain, a new blockchain protocol that's getting a good amount of buzz due to their commitment to a developer-friendly platform designed with business in mind. Originally incubated by individuals on the Disney team, we're pleased to introduce you to Joe Roets, who has much to say about this project. It's not as much fun as a trip to the Magic Kingdom, but assuming you aren't going there today, you're in the next best place. We're here to make your dreams come true in episode number 135 of the Bad Crypto Podcast.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, ignition.
Who's bad?
Dragonchain, Dragonchain. It's almost time for Dragonchain. Come along and take my hand. Let's all go to Dragonland.
Oh my. It's Jingle Day here on the Bad Crypto Podcast, brought to you by Mr. Travis Wright and his delightful voice.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'll take my my award later.
Welcome, everyone, to the show. Unscripted, except for the beginning part, which was scripted. But the rest of it, we have no idea what we're going to say. I don't know what's going to come out of my mouth next. See, I didn't know that was coming. I had no clue.
I didn't know that either, but I figured it was going to be amazing. But I was wrong. This right here is a fun one because, I've been a fan of the Dragon Chains for a while. And, there's some amazing research that came out about this not long. I think a few months ago, right around the time around the ICO. I did not participate in the ICO, but shortly thereafter, when it started hitting on some of the exchanges and I read up on it and I was like, wow, it's trying to do all of this and Disney's doing this and whoa, look at it on their board of directors. Whoa, the dragons. Ooh, look, Slumber Score. What is all this? This is awesome. And so we've had fun chatting about it, researching about it. And today we got to bring the CEO onto the show.
Yeah, and we're going to do that in just a moment. First, I want to welcome everybody. Thank you for attending today's session, and ask you to please subscribe to the show and download the episodes. That really helps with our iTunes rankings. We seem to be pretty much ensconced between number 40 and 50 in business on iTunes, but we'd like to see that go higher. And so your subscriptions, your downloads help, and your reviews help. And as promised, we told you guys that if you made 5-star reviews, if you thought the show was 5-star worthy and wrote funny reviews, we would read some of them. And so here are the latest. This one from CS Fanatic DBZ says, hey guys, the bad is ironic. I give this podcast 5 stars, 4 harvested baby brains, 3 bonus stars, 2 thumbs up, and a box of rat poison squared. So thanks for that.
Wow, we got a box of rat poison squared. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Thanks, Warren. From TMM Twim. Education and advice from professionals. These guys keep me in the loop and have a legit interviews and sound advice. They listen to their audience and are super chill. I have learned a lot. Thank you, gentlemen, for all the great content. Not really funny, but thank you anyway.
That's not funny, but we'll take your 5-star review. Johnny 2 times wrote 1 time to say the baddest podcast. Strap in for a wildly entertaining hour covering the crazy world of crypto. Well, it's not really an hour. When they're not posing as celeb lookalikes for Penn Jillette and Judd Apatow, Travis and Joel craft this amusing and educational podcast by skillfully guiding you through the ins and outs of the cryptocurrency world with plenty of halfway clever puns and more sound effects than an episode of Mad Money.
Yay!
This podcast will reel you in and keep you coming back for more. Also not funny, but 5 stars.
Also not funny. That's good. Here's one from Chucky Sizzle Crypto Jesus. It's already funny.
It is.
He said, bad mother truckers of crypto. To begin, these guys remind me of my drunk uncle talking crypto at Thanksgiving dinner. Very entertaining show, but unlike my drunk uncle with cranberry sauce-filled pie hole, these guys know what they are talking about. I enjoyed the first episode of the top 10 cryptos on my toilet It was a legendary and profitable coup, and learned an immense amount on numbers 10 through 5, lumens, cough, cough. Along with my lack of proper digestion, I am very excited for the episode on numbers 5 to 1 and the big reveal for your top crypto. Looking forward to diving into past podcasts all on the way to work tomorrow. Subscribe.
That's fantastic, and glad that we were able to help with your digestion there. And, I think it can be said that bad crypto makes you regular, or regular listening to bad crypto keeps you regular.
Unless you're irregular, which Joel and I are.
We are. Okay, let's jump. Do your 5-star reviews, gang. If you feel the show merits 5 stars, go to iTunes or Facebook or wherever you submit reviews, and we might include you on the show.
Yeah, it inspires us to keep creating great content and getting amazing people on the show, like Dragonchain CEO. Hello. Awesome.
And when you wish upon a star, it makes no difference who you are, because if you get on bad crypto, your dreams come true. And Joe Roets joined us for a great interview. He is the founder and chief exec of Dragonchain. He's got a lot to say about this blockchain project, which he inventified. And let's go ahead and get to the interview. Mr. Travis Wright, you can barely contain your glee right now. I can see it on your face.
Yeah, no, this is a fun one. I mean, if anyone who's listened to Bad Crypto over the last few months, they've heard us talk about Dragonchain. They've heard us talk about the dragons and the slumber scores and whatnot, and some speculation around the different cryptos as we do. And Joel and I are talking tokens.
Yes, and I see that we have some real dragon energy in the house right now, because we have with us Joe Roets, the founder, the CEO, and the chief architect and janitor at Dragonchain. He's got over 20 years of experience in software architecture, focusing on security, scalability. He created and led multiple tech startups during the mid-90s, and he's a visionary. So he says, it's in his bio, it must be true. He's a thought leader in blockchain tech, and having led a number of projects in the space, he's worked with Overstock, Coinbase, Symbiont, and the Mouse House, Walt Disney Company. So, Joe, welcome to Bad Crypto.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you here. So, for maybe some folks who aren't familiar with Dragonchain, because I know that we don't talk about you all the time, but we've talked about you, at least a handful of times. You guys are describing it as sort of a turnkey blockchain platform for businesses, right? So you can tie and connect a whole bunch of things together. There's an incubator, there's a platform, there's an ecosystem, there's a lot of words. So what is the overall vision for Dragonchain? What is that?
Okay, the platform being the key part of it, the intent was to provide an architecture that allowed real businesses to use the technology, because that's the thing, that if you have any real business data, or if you have any trade secrets in your operations, it's kind of hard to use the platforms that are out there. So when I came to Disney, I had already, a lot of this was already brewing, and I went there to try to build it and to try to test it. And so one way or another, we got to test the architecture. It gets a lot of different use cases. And it was interesting because, if you're a developer and you've been building web services, or you've building systems since the 90s, that a lot of things are already known, right, in the real world in software. And with this architecture, you can use those same patterns, because it's a hybrid blockchain. So at the lowest level, it's still a trust-based chain, which by itself is not the most valuable thing in the world, but our consensus process provides a spectrum of trust, so that by the end of the consensus, it's actually hashed into Bitcoin and possibly Ethereum and possibly other public chains. And then, we also really fixate on, the protection of the business data, the protection of business logic, and the flexibility. That we have a lot of new things, especially in the commercial side, that we're adding in, that will allow you to selectively decentralize. So, the drawback with some of this is that, okay, you're your base level, your business level isn't decentralized. So there's some risk there, some things that are not perfect. But if you can say, look, I have a portion of my business logic that is not sensitive and that actually should be transparent to anybody on the network, to make sure I'm not cheating anyone, that you can selectively throw that out to,
like side chains.
Right.
So here's a couple factoids, and then I want to ask the question that most people, want to know. So this is a public and private hybrid that was created by a group inside the Disney company, and then Disney open sourced the project as the Dragonchain Foundation, which is a nonprofit that manages the upkeep of Dragonchain. The currency is called Dragons, DRGN. There is a total of 493,494,437 dragons created and distributed. And the question that most people want to know is, what is the current association with Disney?
We have no official current association with Disney, right? I mean, I led the team there. Eileen was there. There were multiple people that have come on board outside of Disney that were at Disney. And when we open sourced it, they very much have an arm's length. They're very focused on liability when they open source something. So it actually went out in my name personally, and I had to get approval to create a foundation in case I get hit by a bus or something. And so they approved that, and it all worked, and it was good.
We don't want you to get hit by a bus, Joe. You seem like a nice guy.
Yeah, maybe a 747, but that would mean you could fly. So Mickey Mouse doesn't own any Dragonchain. Like Disney has no piece.
They may. You never know.
What I'm trying to be clear on is that this spun off from Disney, but when people go out there and say it's a Disney project, that's no longer the case.
Right. It was a Disney project. It's still there's still some capacity there, but I don't have visibility into it. Right. So I'm totally external.
What do you mean it's still in some capacity?
There were projects that were ongoing. At Disney. I mean, they're all documented, right?
Gotcha.
Most of them are documented out there publicly. So.
Now, one of the things I've seen you on a video, you've talked about, what drives you personally around this core belief of individual liberty and how that is weaved within everything you're doing at Dragonchain. And you know what? In this day and age where we have big social channels that are censoring certain things and they're certain people are infringing on other things. It's a crazy time. There's different countries where you say something and wow, now you go to jail. And so I think individual liberty is something very key to Joel and I, and we'd love to hear, how does that weave in through what you're doing there at Dragonchain?
Okay. It is all over the place. Everything we do is based in philosophy, that even the architectural, even the design decisions go back to, okay, what are we actually trying to do here? And some of it's boring geek philosophy, but at the same time, when you get into those core issues, that's the whole reason I got involved in cryptocurrency in the first place. I mean, I remember buying Namecoin specifically because, the idea that I don't have a centralized DNS, I don't have, the attacks. I also potentially have the ability to tie my name service to the certificate. So you can say, okay, this is Joe's site and here's the certificate, and I don't have to worry about a central authority because it's a blockchain. Now, some of the modeling, especially on the bidding, was not the best in Namecoin, right? I don't even know what state it's in now, but that type of thing is really important. And we're in the middle of launching, we're using it internally, and we have some pieces, quite a bit of it built, the framework itself, but what we're calling Dragon Factor Identity, wherein you have multiple factors that are at play, KYC, background check, accredited investor, generic forms of identity, bonding, certifications, things like that. But what we want to do is to take any information, and not at Dragonchain, to basically to have a framework wherein a provider can accept the information, can do the check, and then sign a document that ends up on the blockchain that can be wrapped in a certificate, so that now the user can go to a site and can see what the site requires. They might say, okay, I need to know just some form of identity. I might need to know what state you live in. I might need, and that the user can selectively expose those pieces of information, and potentially pieces that aren't even exposed in the factor documents themselves, in a provable way, so that the consumer of that certificate can verify that these trusted providers, there's some trust there, have actually issued this background check or whatever that factor is, and that the user has signed it. So I know that Joe is good to come into the site, and I know that this actually is Joe because he has the key to sign the challenge. And so we're doing stuff like that because then what we can do is say the provider does not have to hold that data, right? So it might be sensitive data. There could be some liability. I wouldn't want to be the holder of big data, it's personal data system. So it allows you to still operate knowing that we know who signed it. We know when they signed it on the blockchain. We can prove the likelihood of it being fake and so on. And then we can still work without me giving you, the consumer, if you have a website and you require something to register, I don't necessarily need to give you everything for my background information for, but at the same time.
It sounds like it would be super GDPR compliant.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're looking at. And so across the board, we're looking at things like that.
There's a whole lot of companies right now looking to be GDPR compliant.
Right.
GDPR. I mean,
Yeah,
I should be able to have that down by now with as many damn emails as I've had with that in the title.
Right.
GD.
Yes.
That's what I say every time I get another email.
That's just one thing, but everything else we're doing is like we're really focused on the fintech is one thing, but when I came into this, I'm a software guy, so I was really interested in the actual capabilities of being able to fixate something in a block in time and have a way to measure that, okay, this much hash power has been applied and what would it take?
And it's been tokenized, and here you see it. And it's completely fascinating. Now, did that come from when you were at, because I know it's looking at your background, I mean, you were a senior technical advisor with Overstock kind of early on, and is that when some of that stuff was going? Because they're starting to take cryptocurrency. I mean, they started taking Bitcoin back in what, 2012 or 13 or something?
Yeah. They started taking Bitcoin before I started working with them. So, and they in fact, it was so funny. I saw the announcement, I believe an announcement on Reddit, that they were the product Medici thing, and they were looking to do securities tokenization to fund startups, and that was a big pain point having.
That was around when the Jobs Act was released there, right? So they're.
Yeah, and so we were, so I volunteered to say, hey, can I take part? Just pay me $1 a year or Bitcoin a year or something. And so I did that with them, and then that whole team went to Symbiont, and the goal there was bonds on blockchain. So tokenized bonds, and basically trying to make a few efficiencies happen. And I don't understand that world enough to describe exactly what everything that we're doing, but bonds, it's like that's a complex thing. So anyway,
bonds, securities, all that stuff there. So let's just go into that question, because people are curious about that. And there's been different things that's been said online. The SEC, is Dragonchain a utility token? Is it a security token? I mean, the way you're describing this whole ecosystem, to me, it sounds completely like a utility token. But I don't think that a lot of those folks. We saw the Facebook hearing, and we heard the kind of questions that were being asked. So I don't know that a lot of them are very deeply technical when it comes to this stuff. So, how would you explain your case and say, hey, you know what, we are a utility token, or we are a security token, and what's going on with the SEC on that?
It would be a really long conversation, but I can give you, I don't want to
Reader's Digest version.
Yeah. Tell me. So, but it's basically that we consider ourselves a utility because when we first came into this and we realized, okay, we had the open source software out there, that there were certain things about the open software that weren't ideal. It was hard to run. You had to have some sysadmin experience. You had to be decent on Linux and things like that, right? And it also, although it's just a node, So it's as scalable as you would want it to be. You would have to know how to scale a system. And so what we wanted to do is, okay, let's refactor a lot of this. And we ended up catching some really interesting pieces that the architecture allowed us to do, right? So as part of that whole thing, when we thought, okay, if we're going to do this as a commercial entity, how do we drive it? How does, is it a paid thing? And it made total sense to model the software license as the token. So it's an interesting thing, because when you use Dragonchain commercial platform, you don't spend dragons, you use them, right? It is a utility, and it's very, when you look at it, it's very clear cut for an engineer. I mean, for lawyers, it is hard to describe, but the novel piece about that tokenized micro license, as we call it, is that you're freezing time. Unlike in the older model where you would buy a version of software and have to upgrade the next year, that type of thing, or in a model where you're paying monthly on as a service. That what we wanted to do is say, look, people are going to be building stuff on blockchain, and they aren't going to know how quickly they're going to ramp up. And it actually is interesting to tokenize it, because then you can basically purchase your tokens in advance, and they're frozen. So you aren't spending them by waiting. So there's no rush to push stuff on there. Then when we get into the DDSS, the slumber score stuff, it ends up being interesting, because what some people might think of as speculative would actually be utility, because I'm using the utility of the slumber score to get the utility of the actual services at a discount. And so there is a reason to do all of those things, and it's also to stabilize. But one way or another, as you use those tokens, it's in our minds, it's a utility, and it depends on how you look at it. I mean, our sale, we didn't have any discounts during the public sale. So in our guidance, it was, I don't want to say in the guidance, because the lawyers will probably get on my case, but one way or another, that there was no expectation of profit during that sale. Because if you put in one Bitcoin of value, we determined market price based upon how much was contributed over that period of time, and you got one Bitcoin worth of dragons at that fairest market price. And so no matter when you came in or how much you put in, it was the same price. And a lot of people didn't like that, right? A lot of people complained about it, but we wanted to do that for those reasons, and because we knew we were coming out of a Fortune 500 company with
trying to be fair, trying to get your P's and Q's all along.
Right, and
the challenging thing when the goalpost keeps moving. Exactly.
And I had just gone through. I tried to buy some Mist token, if you remember that, the VPN one, and I tried, and I think it was in Europe, and so I woke up too late to get in, and I tried to buy some BAT token. I was sitting there, and I was going to buy it, and it sold out in like one or two blocks, right? So I didn't even get in. I thought, I don't really want that type of a model anyway. I want something
that's frustrating. You know what that really dilutes is your community.
Yes.
Right? It's like if you have just like a few whales come in and buy it all, that's not good for your business. And that's where I think the model of where the SEC looks at it and goes, oh, only accredited investors need to be, like, they have to have $1 million to come in. I'm like, no, I'd rather have 100,000 people paying $100, and then guess what? Now I've got a badass community of people who are wanting to support your business.
You don't want any of that bat coin anyway. You want bad coin. Bad coin is the only way to go. I'm looking at the website.
Let me play something on that before I forget. I don't remember our median, but I know that it always was in my mind that the smallest contribution was 6 cents, right? I think they paid more in fees than they did in the contribution.
Wow, so bought like one?
Yes, they got one time. It's like, I loved that, right? Yeah. I loved the fact that was possible because...
it's beautiful.
So on your main page, you talk about how you have global reach, but you've got a map there local in Seattle, and you've pinpointed on the map Disney, Starbucks, Boeing, Zillow, Amazon, Expedia, Microsoft, Valve, T-Mobile, and Bittrex is just down the street in Bellevue. You're probably not going to be able to say anything, but is this a foreshadowing of any partnerships that might be announced?
No, I will tell you, we speak with a lot of companies. We have a lot of connections in a lot of different places, and there's a lot of process of socialization, and a lot of those companies are still learning about blockchain and how they can use it, and a lot of it tends to be trying to reorient them after they see what's going on in the press, because in the press or any of the Senate hearings when they're talking about charlatans and everything else, we have to kind of
see. I think now that Starbucks is saying that anybody can use their bathrooms for free, I think they need to take it a step further. Come into Starbucks and we'll give you free crypto. We'll get you out of debt. We'll pay your bills.
Yeah.
Because we don't care about customers anymore. We just want to make sure that we're being social.
Yeah.
Why not, right?
Coffee coin. Here, have some coffee coin.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, though, about that, because there was a conspiracy video about look, Dragonchain is in black, and so is Bittrex, and Starbucks, and Expedia, and look, and these are not. And they just went on this wild speculative thing.
I love it.
And
I was waiting for someone to do some analysis of the distribution, right? Because I know, the answer is it was the website designer when we first, during the token, before the token sale, put that together. So
I just want to say this: Bittrex is right down the street. You just need to go knock on the door and be like, "Hey, Bittrex, why aren't you? What's up, Bittrex?"
Yes, they are. I drive by them every day on the way into the office.
Yeah,
well,
so hook the Seattle brother up.
It's not cheap to get on these exchanges. Didn't we hear just the other day, Travis, that Binance wanted $3 million to be listed on?
Yeah, that's a good business to be in.
That's
be all like, give us $3 million.
I love your logo. When you see the logo, it's so Disney-fied. And I know that was probably the intent, but he's great. Does he have a name?
Jojo. And I didn't name him. It is Jojo.
Sure.
I didn't.
Is it Joe 3, Joe 3?
No, it's J-O-J-O. Yeah.
Jojo. Very nice.
Show. There's some
insight. And the intent actually wasn't. It was a weird thing because when we left, or when we open sourced it, one of the rules was you can't use a character, any of their trademarks. You can't use any of their IP. You can't use the name. So you have to think of your own. And so I used to design logos for a living, right? So in fact, in Kansas City, in Lawrence. So
really, rock chalk, brother, rock chalk.
Yes. Nice. And so one way or another, I wanted forever. I do a lot of things with. I did a lot of things with the symmetry of letters and stuff, and so I really wanted the chain and a letter ended in N, and to flip it upside down. And I love that element of it, and I brought it up. It's like, okay, it's coming out of Disney, and there's dragons. That makes sense, and dragons protect the treasure, right? And so that's what it ended up. Everyone just said, yes, that's perfect, right? It's
good.
We're protecting the business value, and then the little lizard. It's a what is it? The little dragon. It's called a baby dragon. It's called it's like something girdled lizard, and it wraps around on itself, and when it's
you should know this better, Joe. This is
he's got a girdle. Jojo wears a girdle.
Jojo was the man.
Can you look that up? I think they actually made a post. There's a Medium post and the Dragonchain stuff that describes the whole background of it and who did
That's beautiful.
Sucking that gut, Jojo. Well, let's do some kind of rapid fire here because we got a bunch of questions from people in on our Bad Crypto Mastermind and in the Dragon Telegram. So let's hit up some short answers to a bunch of these. We read somewhere that Dragon has had over 500 apply to the incubator. How does that work?
The initial application is just that. It's an application. You come in, you fill out a form that includes all of the fundamentals, things we would need to know to evaluate. The evaluation process from our side is intended to be objective. So we have a set of rules. You get past the threshold, and then you get into a mix where we might start talking to you. And the intent was to then use DDSS to rank them based upon community knowledge. So it's not us anymore. The whole intent, and not just for securities laws reasons, but that is one part of it, but also because we think the best information will come from the outside. We aren't going to be, 5 guys sitting in a cigar-filled room deciding who to fund. That wasn't the intent.
What's wrong with cigars?
Cigars are beautiful.
What's wrong with rooms?
Rooms are fine.
What's wrong with guys?
Yeah.
Depending on who you're talking about.
So sexist, so smokist.
So we were, we put that together, and because of all the stuff with regulatory matters, we've kind of backburnered, but we're looking right now at there are 3 different groups that have come to us, 2 of which we have a lot of trust in, that want to take it over, and what we're trying to figure out is the best framework that we can still keep the model that philosophically fits what we're wanting to do, yet allow them to do their best practices, because they at least 2 of them, that they do run incubators already. And if we can fit them into our mold where we're saying, look, we really want to find the earliest, best information to accelerate these projects through. And, and then there's a marketplace there. So there are a lot of other elements that the projects might not, it might be one dev, or it might be one business person that doesn't have a dev, but they can come in then to the marketplace and tie everything together. That's pretty too long of an answer.
Dragon Slumber Score. What is that? How does it work, and why?
Okay. All right. So when we were early in the process, we didn't know, especially because we couldn't directly solicit exchanges. We didn't know what would happen after the fact. So we thought, okay, we very much had modeled everything to go against pump and dump mechanics. And so it was one part of it that, kind of came from, if you guys remember Bitcoin Days Destroyed, kind of that measure, where I wanted the ability to say, to build a score that we based upon the level of fundamentals that you might be in, rather than you're not sitting in an exchange, you're not trading. We also had, like, say, it's incentivization to get out of an exchange. That is, it's best practice to be holding your tokens in a hardware wallet, or at least, something that's cold that isn't an exchange, because they get hacked, historically anyway.
We don't hold, we hodl.
Yes. Okay. Sorry. And that one way or another, it ends up being a measure of courage, a measure of how much you believe in this, and also it ends up being applied for access. That is, to get into the platform at all in any of the beta pieces, you have to have a slumber score higher than a certain amount, which lowers as we slowly roll it out. It's a way to control that rollout. That you can control whether you're the first to get the software or not by achieving the highest slumber score.
Yeah, in the future, it's going to be like pickup line. Hey, babe, want to see my slumber score?
Right on.
Got a slumber score over 1 million, babe. Check it out.
And I will say too, we are using it for discounts. That is, in the commercial platform, there is a margin which can be greatly reduced depending upon how high your slumber score is. We did use it successfully in a couple of token sales, but we're right now pushing that off. But it was very much intended to, how do I say this? Provide.
It looked like you were getting some nice discounts. Like if you had so what I saw was that if you had 5 million Dragon score, then maybe you're paying 6 cents a token. Or if you have 1 million, then maybe you're paying 8 cents a token. So you got a nice little discount,
right?
But you're not going to be doing token sales anymore. Is that correct?
Well, once it's clear, it's still possible once it's clear. We aren't right now. And in the meantime, others might be. And in the meantime, there are, how do I say, there's incubators that might also apply security tokens. They might also apply traditional angel investment, things like that, which is still applicable. You could still use the DDSS even with an angel investor to say, if you have an appropriate DDSS, you get a better rate or earlier entry or something like that. And the reason for that was because those projects, at least at that time, where you would have a known supply of tokens, and when people have purchased at a discount at all, you have to know that that gap of discount is what will get dumped, right? That I might retain some, but I'm gonna I'm going to unload all of the tokens that I ended up getting for free. And to counter that, we wanted to say the people who are most likely to hold, the people who are less likely to, do.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
So
if they're holding their dragon chain, they don't want to sell it because then they'll lose all that dragon score, which then, so they wouldn't.
I may have to confess that I've lost some slumber score. So I'm looking at the roadmap here under the goals, and frankly, there's a lot here that is above my pay grade that I don't even know what so many of the things you have listed here are. They're very technical. Two questions around this. One, what would be the most significant developments in moving forward the project that are on this timeline? And two, what's a wormhole? But let's start with the first part.
The probably, in my opinion anyway, the most significant pieces are the interchain components, where you can selectively decentralize certain parts of your processing, and that the chains can interact with each other, and the ability to watch certain activities on a different chain and take action in Dragon Chain. It also it's a really interesting thing because a lot of the pieces that we're building, there are multiple. I don't even know how many. There are multiple applications and or modules being built. There's an identity one. There's an HR and recruiting one. There's, of course, Lateral, the arts one. And
I see the interchains. I see June, you've got Ethereum interchain library, July, Ethereum Classic, August, Neo, September, Bitcoin. So you feel like those are the developments that are going to bring the most attention to the platform and most functionality?
At least of what I can talk about right now. I mean, those are the things that are on the roadmap that are the most technically interesting because they provide the most flexibility. If you come in, as an example, once we get these, and we're ahead of schedule on a few of these, but once we get them in place, we're going to be adding things like Siacoin, Filecoin, storage. I'm trying to think what else. So basically, multiple other more single-purpose chains, so that when you come in as an enterprise, you don't have that question of which do I use? And on top of the fact, that's why we want you to come to Dragon Chain, because we allow you that flexibility, and that's the intent of what we're doing.
Come to Dragon Chain. We have wormholes, December 2018, and it's not WORM. It's a dragon, WYRM. What is a wormhole?
It amounts. I don't have. I probably can't tell you all the details, but it amounts to the ability to move tokens between chains and track them, and to do various things. But a lot of it, it's not just that. The crux of it is some of the mechanics and economic pieces around it. That it's one thing to move them, but it's another to say there's a scarcity involved. There's a limit. There, different uses.
Sort of shapeshiftery, but if you're working with all these different chains and doing these interchains, as you're calling them, then there has to be some sort of mechanism to be able to send payments through the different platforms. It would make sense,
right? I mean, and the hardest part of that is the stuff that's happening on each chain. I mean, just taking action, like say, just seeing that something happens on Ethereum, doing something in Dragon Chain, and then making something happen in Neo. That's relatively straightforward because both of those sides don't actually need to know about the other unless you have some requirement. But yeah,
that's great. A lot of people, whenever I went into your Telegram group and I asked them, I said a lot of people will come in here in the group and say, "Hey, when's the mainnet going to launch?" And and so if you could maybe explain the architecture in more of a layman's terms, whereas it may not be like other chains that they might be used to.
Because we're hybrid, every business concern has its own chain. And so, if you have a small business, you might have 2 or 3 chains depending on what they're doing, but they are their own. And the consensus happens above that. So at that level, it's private, it's trusted. You can apply, because the architecture has an abstracted proof. You can apply proof of work at that level if you choose to do so. You can apply proof of stake or things that are as yet undeveloped, if you have the value, if it makes sense. Yet, just building your smart contracts and your system on Dragon Chain, part of what happens automatically is you get 4 more levels and some of different types of verification. So in the intent, I'm a software architect, so everything's about structure. And the intent is, okay, at my business level, I trust my own data. I don't really have to worry so much as long as I have a secure system and whatnot. However, the rest of the enterprise doesn't necessarily know what the hell I'm doing. So there's some validation components, and there's an actual function that members and people who own Dragons can actually run those nodes to provide validation for the network. The next level of verification is to check that validation to make sure that it's not all the same party. Because, okay, you might have 4 separate nodes that are validating your blocks, but if they're all owned by you, it doesn't really mean much. And so to push the decentralization, then the next level of verification is just a notary. So, and it's on the enterprise side, when we were at Disney, the intent was that's when it would go out the door, when it would be Deloitte or it'd be IBM or it'd be, some other reputable organization that's actually signing the blocks. It's just a hash. There's no work involved. I'm just saying that I saw this at this time, that you can trace it back if ever you need to. But in the commercial side, it's quite a bit more of that is pushed down, that unless you specifically need it to be only your nodes at the level 2 and 3, it'll be whoever is providing them at best price. And it's all a marketplace itself. So you might say, I need one of those to be a GovCloud node, and I need one of them to be in a certain region in Amazon's infrastructure, and another in another region if you want. And basically the network will find the cheapest node to sign that. And then after the notary level is the public, which is on the open source side. The initial implementation was Bitcoin. We think that the first implementation on the commercial side, at least right now, is going to be Ethereum. But we will also be having Bitcoin, and we don't know yet what the control level is. I mean, we do know that there is the ability to say, I want this pushed onto Bitcoin ASAP. It's going to cost more, but that's what I want. Versus put this in the pool, and either daily or hourly or something else, all of them get thrown into Bitcoin. And now the interesting thing about it is that for any given transaction, if I'm sued or if I need to prove something to someone, I can take it in a human readable report and show them that it went through these validation, which are owned by these parties. This check, we had a notary signed by IBM and my accounting firm, and then so if a judge doesn't understand Bitcoin, they at least say, okay, I trust that accounting firm, versus someone who understands that they can actually say, okay, it was in Bitcoin since last January, therefore this is the amount of hash power that would be required to fake that, and I can extrapolate that to dollar amount. I can say, it'd be $10 billion to fake that, and the entire world would know. So it's a way to show to someone, and then to also have an API version of the same, so that I can say, look, I just got your transaction for $2 million to purchase this asset, and yet I'm not going to accept it or take action until such time as it's been on the chain long enough that the hash power is worth 10 times that amount. Things like that.
So much to think about on that, huh?
Yes.
Enterprise blockchain is not easy. I mean, that's one thing that is interesting to me is the fact that, you can pull in components of all these other different blockchains and then build your own custom sort of framework ecosystem for each individual business. Like, oh, you want to pull in Augur to do this, or you want to pull in this, or you need to have EOS come do this. And well, it's like you can just connect them all. And that's one of the things that excited me about that is how you guys were setting that up. Another thing is, like, you have some pretty interesting people on your board of directors, right? On your advisory board. Right. The one that strikes me is the nice lady from Starbucks, who's the VP of partnerships and payments. And then you look at that and you go, wait a second. Starbucks, payments, Dragonchain,
homeless people using bathrooms.
Free crypto when you poo in our bathrooms. I mean, what is the deal with that? Is there anything that we can infer?
Yeah. You can infer all you want. But, he's not saying.
That's so funny. No, I mean she was former Disney, right? And so we knew her at Disney, and in fact she's brilliant. And she was I can't remember her title there, but she was in payments and loyalty programs and all that there. And so she's just a really good advisor, right? And she's well connected.
I want to use my dragon at Starbucks. Come on, Joe. I want to use it at Disneyland.
Yeah, someday, right? I don't know.
Maybe so. Right on.
Joe, we appreciate you spending some time with us here and sharing with the Republic of Bad Cryptopia. There's certainly a lot of interest in the Dragonchain project, and Travis and I are really drawn to platforms. There's a lot of tokens that have utility, but just like iTunes became the platform for people to make and distribute apps and podcasts and music, we feel like the blockchain platforms are the future and the place to really be paying attention.
Yes, you're right.
I am right, Mr. Travis, right?
That is true. Hey, one other question, real quick. Jeffrey N. on your Dragon Telegram, he wanted to know about, you were explaining some academy. There's like some Dragon Chain Academy of some sort happening?
Oh, it was, okay, so all of these, the side pieces are all intended to increase adoption, right? So the academy is there to avoid doing the typical certification racket. We've tokenized it. It's getting built right now, but one way or another, the intent is that you don't have to, because you think about it. I mean, I've been a dev forever, and if you wanted a Red Hat certification, you pretty much had to be a Westerner with a good job to afford to do that. If you wanted an Oracle, if you wanted, any of the certifications, and it's a big racket. So we're thinking, okay, how do you handle if you have some kid somewhere in Asia that doesn't have the $3,000 to do that, right? So yet they're brilliant. You still want them in the system. So what the intent is to have some process where you go through the first phase of a certification, and you get an award of dragons. They're all locked. You can't pull them out and sell them or anything. But what you can do in that instance is you can take, as an example, 90% of them, and you buy the next round. Okay, you pass the next round, you get another award. Then you take another, and you keep going through this until you achieve the certification. At that point, they get unlocked for the marketplace. So now you can go in and build whatever it is you wanted to build, and you're using them, and they're locked in there as well. So those would always be locked. You can only use them in the system, but you can actually build something. At the same time, you would become a certified developer, or certified architect, or certified analyst, or whatever the track you were in the marketplace, so that when someone is developing on the platform or out of the incubator, they need a dev, or they need an analyst, or they need someone who understands some particular aspect of either blockchain generically or Dragonchain itself, you're there, right? So you have this mechanism from nowhere where everyone's leveled up, no matter where you are. A lot of people will already be in there, but then they'll price themselves up. Whereas the other people, you set your own price in the marketplace. So
nice mechanics built in there.
Yeah,
very good.
Last question, Joe. The name itself, Dragonchain, was that your inspiration, and why?
Yes, it's mine, and it's the dragons protect their treasure, and that's our key component was that we protect the business data, we protect the things that otherwise you can't do on blockchain. You can't put HIPAA data, you can't put financial data on a blockchain. It's just there are a bunch of really interesting I guess incentives when you do that, because like say in the old world, if you're using open source, I can attack your stuff. I can find holes somewhat I'm incentivized to in various ways to contribute back solutions, or at least to report them. Whereas in crypto, if all of my data is there, even if it's obfuscated, you're going to find out what it is. And all my money's there. If there are any holes, you're going to grab all my data and all my money.
And obfuscating my data, Mr. Joelcom.
Right. Well, dragons in mythology have traditionally gotten a bad rap, but dating back to Eastern, the dragon is powerful. In fact, I was born in the year of the dragon. And
do you have dragon energy, Joelcom?
I have dragon energy.
Just like Kanye. Oh,
I do.
76, is that right? 76.
Thank you. 64.
But,
okay. I'm sorry. Well, all right. Okay.
But no, thank you very much. I'll take that. Because that's dragon.
I'm younger than me now. Very
Fire
nice.
breathing.
Very nice.
Joe
So
Roets.
I guess the final question would be, when can we fly
I had the final question.
No, when can we fly the dragon to the moon and get a Lambo?
Hope soon. Hopefully, right? I don't know. Yeah.
When moon? Hopefully soon. All right.
Joe Roets, Dragonchain CEO, founder. Joe, thanks so much. And dragonchain.com is the website.
Thank you.
Thanks again to Joe Roets from Dragonchain for joining us for this. And maybe we'll take the video and put it up in the Bad Crypto Mastermind. If you guys aren't in the mastermind, duh, it's the only Facebook group that really matters to me and Travis. It's
And we'll probably put that
badco.in.
before the show even goes live. That way you guys get to see it first, because we sometimes like to do that. We don't always do that, but sometimes we do.
It's because I got to edit it, and sometimes I don't want to.
You don't really have to. There's not a whole lot of editing on it. Just cut, go.
Well, there was that wardrobe malfunction that you had, and I don't know.
Well, I'm sure our fan wants to see my nipples. It's okay.
Just one of them. It was just
my one fan.
It wasn't a striptease. It was a malfunction. So it's badco.in/mastermind is how you join the group. And we also have discussion happening on the Telegram, badco.in/guess what? Telegram. Duh.
We have such good naming.
We have the best names here. And Travis, my book comes out in just 2 days. Funformulabook.com. Go get it. Go get it.
Very nice. On June 5th?
Yeah, June the 5th.
Very nice, because that's 2 days from now.
That is, well, if you're listening to this on the episode release date, which is June 3rd, because math, then the book comes out.
Not necessarily on the recording date.
Definitely not on the recording date, because sometimes we get things done, beforehand. And thanks for listening. We appreciate you all so much. In fact, if you would just go to somebody that's nearby, whether it's, a family member or a stranger, and just give them a bad hug. Just say, this is from the guys at Bad Crypto, because, we want to just share crypto love everywhere.
And then you can also say, Alexa, play the Bad Crypto podcast.
They're going to start tuning out because of this.
Alexa, stop.
You are teaching Alexa how to stay bad. The Bad Crypto Podcast is a production of Bad Crypto LLC. The content of the show, the videos, and the website is provided for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only. It's not intended to be and does not constitute financial, investment, or trading advice of any kind. You shouldn't make any decisions as to finances, investing, trading, or anything else based on this information without undertaking independent due diligence and consultation with a professional financial advisor. Please understand that the trading of Bitcoins and alternative cryptocurrencies have potential risks involved. Anyone wishing to invest in any of the currencies or tokens mentioned on this podcast should first seek their own independent professional financial advisor.
On a star, makes no difference who you are.
Anything your heart desires will come to you.
Very nice. Have my part and then mix in his part, and that's a nice little outro.
Who's